Okay, folks, you all set here? Okay. All right, we'll start out with this, finance committee, we'll go right into the audit, finance, audit and finance, yeah. Okay, so, we have today, it's our meeting where the audit will be discussed. I'll turn it over to, VP for finance for the introductions.
We were gonna first start with the ITC
Okay.
pollution liability insurance renewal.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, John.
That's
Yeah.
perfectly all right.
Yeah, John, why don't you come up and, we'll get you,
I don't need a chair.
okay, you're good.
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm still able to stand.
It's all right.
Good morning,
Yeah, sure,
everybody.
Good morning.
How are you on this beautiful day? Pass these around. Yeah. Today we have two of our insurance contracts that come up in July. The first one would be the RTC, the Transportation Center. And as you get, we did very well on both of them. Last year, our costs for the Transportation Center, this is a separate package policy. It's not included in our self-insured program. So last year was $102,629, and this year it's $107,483. Primarily, the increase in cost, which we've been very fortunate in holding down, is due to the increase in the amount of property insured, due to increased costs of construction and building on. We also have our legal liability for the cars that are parked and for which we charge. We have the limit, the minimum limit that's required for such operations, it's $2 million. Comprehensive is $250 per claim, and the collision deductible is $500 per claim. On the fire insurance, all our deductible is $2,500 per claim. That policy runs from July 1st to July 1st. The next policy that we have is our environmental impairment liability at the RTC. That's a 3-year insurance contract with a $1 million limit and a $100,000 deductible. For the prior 3-year period, the premium was $51,437. And for the new 3-year period, exactly the same amount. They didn't change it. So those are the two contracts. If anybody has any questions, I'll try and answer them.
I thought you did a good job.
Yeah,
The numbers are
That's good news.
very
Yeah,
good.
that is good news. Good.
Any questions for John? Any questions? I don't want him to stick around too long because the premium might go up, so. All right, so.
A minute.
All right, so how about I need a motion for, I'm gonna group these policies together. I need a
That's
motion to accept, okay, Robert, second, Tony, all in favor? Okay, very good,
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Next we have Greg Evans from Bonadio, he's gonna present the audited financial statements.
No, great.
Okay.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I am Greg Evans. I'm your audit partner from the Bonadio Group. With me today is Tanya Budge, our manager, and Jimmy Chelfie, who did the bulk of this work.
But you're gonna take credit for it.
Yes, oh, absolutely. Unless something's wrong, then can't yell at Jimmy, but, so we prepared a little bound presentation for you, because obviously these documents are pretty voluminous, and it gives us the opportunity to move through it pretty quickly. So starting with the table of contents, I think it's always important to point out what it is we were engaged to do here. So number one, we were engaged to provide an audit of the financial statements for the year ended March 31, 2022. That audit is done in accordance with government auditing standards. which means we look at your internal controls over financial reporting. We also did an audit of your federal awards, because you did expend over $750,000 in federal funds. And we did an audit of your New York State transportation assistance. We also looked at your compliance with the state comptroller's investment guidelines. We'll have a quick report on that. And we'll talk briefly about some new accounting standards that are coming up that could be a little troublesome. So rather than flipping through all these pages, I do have the opportunity to kind of summarize things for you, just because of the way the audit went. The audit went perfectly, quite honestly. We're here in June 23rd-ish, I think is the date. Maybe 24th? No, 24th, okay. I should figure that out. So that being said, so that's less than a 3-month turnaround to get this audit done. And obviously it's a big audit. It's a difficult audit. There's a lot of things going on here. So, you know, kudos to Linda and Melissa and their team for being able to get us through this audit. Quite frankly, we do a lot of large counties that we couldn't possibly get done in 3 months. We do a lot of small towns that we couldn't possibly get done in 3 months. So this is a big deal in terms of timeliness. So in terms of the results of the audit, like I said, we look at internal controls. We make sure those controls are designed effectively. And we make sure that they're operating as designed. We have no findings to report, which is, again, a big deal. Along those lines, we have no adjusting journal entries to report. What that means is
That's huge.
Yes, that is probably the biggest
Think about
takeaway.
all the transactions that are flying through.
Right.
That's huge.
Thousands.
So that means those reports that you're getting all year are the numbers that ended up in these reports, and that doesn't always happen, quite frankly. Even it's a public report, so I'll say it. Onondaga County, they had a big adjustment at year end. They had a big finding. They had a material weakness. So unusual for them, but it does happen quite a bit. So again, A+ regards to that. And again, we also have to look at compliance, like I just talked about, over those federal awards, over that New York State assistance. We have to make sure that you're spending in accordance with those grant guidelines. No problems there, no compliance issues. And we have to look at, again, internal controls over compliance. So just what controls do you have in place to make sure you're spending in accordance with those grant guidelines? No findings there either. So, straight across the board, no issues. With that, I will flip over to page 7. We'll talk a little bit about some of the financial highlights. And most of these financial highlights that are in here can be found in the front section of your financial statements too, the management discussion and analysis, which again provides a little comparative analysis and some variance analysis as to why some of the numbers changed. Probably a really good place to get a high level summary of the financial statement. So that being said, I'll point out a couple things that came to my attention. Before I do that, I will say that these are your financial statements, although we help put them together. You're here to vote on them and take responsibility for these financial statements. And again, given the report that I just gave you, it certainly makes it a lot easier for you to approve the financial statements today. So cash, some of you that may have been around a few years ago, cash was certainly an issue. Cash is not an issue at this point. Cash went up another 1.6. Sorry, I'm just reporting the numbers. So up again from 1 to about 12.7 million. The third bullet there, designated cash. So you had an opportunity to put a little more money away into the reserves this year. So that went up again, 5 million for capital projects and another 1.5 million into the insurance reserve fund. This is the good news sharing part of this. So moving on to the next page, just some quick highlights there. Capital assets had a net decrease of 7.5 million, so that net decrease, I'll point out, is a result of you didn't sell a bunch of assets, you have depreciation expense. Just worth pointing out that depreciation doesn't mean a whole lot to you at this point.
Really just the buses.
Right. For the most part, yeah. Yep. Maybe some equipment, but, yeah. Moving on to page 9, there's a couple things I wanna point out here. In terms of your OPEB liabilities, your OPEB liability is something we talk about every year. It's your retiree health insurance. That number actually went down 6.5 million this year. When we think about what's happening in the world today with inflation, rising costs, when you get your next OPEB valuation, this is just sort of the warning, so don't be afraid of the sticker shock. That number is likely going to go up again. I mean, and that's the nature of these calculations in terms of pension liability, OPEB liabilities. They're estimates. They're estimates done by actuaries. We sort of expect that at this point in time, with interest rates changing, costs changing, that those numbers are going to change significantly when you see that next valuation.
That's gonna be.
Over a long term though.
Over long, yeah, now
Probably gonna go down.
Yeah. I mean, if we think about that, so that OPEB liability is again the total number that you're gonna expect to pay for all your current employees and your retired employees over time. So it's, you know, it's something to keep in the back of your mind, but it's not something you're gonna manage the organization on because, again, it's a giant estimate, so.
And that's next spring.
Well, and it's something we have to account for, but not fund.
Right, exactly. Well, and you're not really even allowed to fund by
Right.
New York State, so you can't put the money in a trust or anything, so.
It's over a long period of time. What's the time period? 20 years, 30 years?
It's the life cycle of the retirees.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a 21-year-old employee and you have offered them retiree health insurance, you start accounting for those costs today.
Which we're not doing. You know, so 2011, we stopped the retiree healthcare.
Right, so at some point, it should start to trail
Right,
off,
you're gonna see it.
Yeah.
Trail down.
assuming those costs trail off. So last bullet there, in terms of the balance sheet or statement of net position, current assets versus current liabilities, you know, what do we have at year end and what do we owe? 39 million versus 4.6 million, obviously a healthy net position, number to have at year end. Alright, statement of revenues, expenses and changes in net position. Obviously, started to come out of the pandemic this year, so we would have expected to see those operating revenues go up, and they did, you know, an increase of about 3 million. Non-operating revenues, which includes federal assistance and state assistance. Obviously, going back to 2021, you had a big influx of federal revenue, so that dropped off a little bit in 2022, but the state revenue continued to go up a little bit. Certainly worth pointing out. Mortgage tax revenue, up 1.8 million from the prior year. Something else in terms of when budgeting, you have to think about that. I mean, what's gonna happen with that number? Interest rates are going up, you know, you gotta believe that number is gonna, it would have to, right?
At some point, yeah.
I don't even believe what we've seen for the last couple
Oh,
of years.
yeah, it's crazy, but, so, I mean, obviously, celebrate the success there. Moving on, operating expenses, in total decreased by 7.4 million. But I wanna point out that some of that is a result of that OPEB adjustment, which has to be flowed through your statement there, which was about an $8.8 million adjustment. So those expenses went down. When you pull that up, your operating expenses went up a little bit, which, you know, we would expect to see. So that's the quick overview of what you've seen. Certainly, you know, from an audit perspective, you can't ask for anything more than from your team. You know, no findings, no journal entries, and we're here on time.
Yeah, and I just wanna, go on the record and thank Linda and her team, Melissa,
Kate?
Kate, everybody that's involved with, the financial side of this company. I've been here for 20 years, 18 years, 19 years. And we get clean audits all the time. And that's, it's unheard of, to be honest with you. So, thank you.
Thank you.
For everything you do.
This was, very, very proud of staff that was involved, and this is it's complex fiscal accounting.
Any questions for me about the reports?
Any other comments, Linda? We all set with that audit? We still gotta go over,
I have other documents
Yeah.
that have to be
that
approved
to be
as well,
discussed,
but
yeah.
this just needs to be approved by the board.
Okay. So the audit's been presented. I actually went over it this week with Linda, Melissa, and, Chris and Brian, so I felt very comfortable. Need a motion now to accept it. Second, we have to vote. Go ahead, Linda.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks,
I
everybody.
wanna thank you. You guys did a great job on the
You're welcome. Thank you. Pleasure to work with you.
Julius and all.
I just wanna thank my team as well. Some of them are right here in the room, some new people, Angela, Matt, Len, and thanks Melissa, Kate, and, all of your team, Christine, and is each everything? Peach and Tara too. Thanks for all your hard work.
I mean, really, when you think about it, and there's $80 million a year walking through this company, and you get a report like that, year after year after year. Because your team,
It's amazing. It really is. I always brag about this to other people. They told me they don't believe me, and they will come here.
Especially no journal entries. That is the key,
no adjustments,
no
no,
adjustments.
yeah, it's unheard of, to be honest with you. So great job, Lynn.
Thank you. So with the audited financial statements, we are also required to submit several other reports into the Public Authority Reporting Information System, which is referred to as PARIS. You'll hear us refer to that. This is per public authority law. So the financial information that's in the audited financial statements has to be put in the system in a certain format, so that's what the fourth motion is, summary financial information. I'll prepare that and put it in the system and submit it by June 30th. We just need approval for that summary to be entered into PARIS.
Okay, got motion there. Monty, second, Llewellyn, all in favor? Aye.
The other item in your board packet is the guidelines regarding the disposition of property. If you have any questions on that, I can answer it. There's been no changes to this. It just needs to be reviewed and approved by the board.
Motion on that, Monty, second, Robert, all in favor? Aye.
Also in your board packet is the annual investment report and investment guidelines. They have to be reviewed and approved by the board as well. If there's any questions on those, I can answer them.
There's no really change over there. Right?
There's no change in that.
Same, same. It's only we're limited in CDs and treasuries, things where we're limited in investing our money. And we have our money right now,
Unfortunately.
which is 0 on 0. And then we are in money market accounts, of course. So I need a motion on the investment guidelines. Tony, second, Monty, all in favor? Aye.
And Kate has a couple of items she needs to present as well.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone. All right, so first and foremost, I have a motion to request approval for our annual procurement report.
So the public authority law states that we must complete a report on an annual basis for all procurement contracts that are valued at $5,000 and greater. So this is the giant, lovely looking spreadsheet that was in your board packet. Basically just detailing out all of the expenditures for said procurement contracts in the last fiscal year. Anyone has any questions?
I'll let everybody just take a peek at that. It's good right before you go to bed at night.
Cure for insomnia.
I would, if I can, I would
Yeah.
like to point out a lot of the data, entry that goes into this giant report is processed by our procurement analyst, Lauren DeMaestri. She's been working on this report with me for the last 3 years, has been taking on more responsibility every year. It is a huge lift for this department, so I just wanted to recognize all of her work on this.
Any questions for Caitlin? Give me a few minutes to go through it.
What's that? You can share it now. You don't have one?
No.
I can even share. Okay, no,
No way, no, this is that time.
if you do have questions about any purchases, you can always contact me. Okay, so I need a motion to accept the procurement report. Well, second, Neil, all in favor? Aye. Alright, now we're gonna talk a little bit about the procurement manual updates.
Yes, so the public authorities law also states that we have to have our guidelines reviewed and approved by the board on an annual basis. So that was the procurement manual that was sent to you all electronically. I do have an electronic copy if you'd like to view that as well. There were no policy changes to the manual this year. There were some procedural, we looked to streamline the manual this year to keep it in line with our internal controls. We typically have a policy document and a separate procedural document. So we took some of the more specific step-by-step procedures out of the procurement manual this year, keeping it just policy and overarching procedures. Makes it a little bit easier of a read. And as well, we are also looking to request addition to our procurement thresholds. We're adding the director of marketing and communications at a $2,500 threshold.
Questions on any thresholds or anything? How about a motion to move that update? Tony, second, Monty, all in favor? Aye. Keely, you're gonna wanna stay?
Yeah, I mean, the next resolution is just for the annual subsidy payments, that's included in your board report.
Okay, so let's go to resolution 4C,
This is the resolution for the transportation planning.
pumps, four, is that, yeah, four, which one are you up for? Yeah, let's,
I was just
alright,
doing
we'll go,
4B.
okay, we'll do the subsidy, I'm sorry, Linda.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do the subsidies, we'll get that done.
Okay.
Go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, so that's in your board report, these are, not related to any accounting entries. It's basically strictly, on the approved operating budget deficit. And it's, the purpose of this is just to reinforce the legal separation between the authority and its various central subsidiaries.
So you have the CNY RTA, and then you have all the subsidiaries under that. Like Central United, et cetera. Okay, so with that being said, need a motion for the subsidy payments. Julius, second. Well, all in favor? Aye. Okay, now we're gonna get into, the transportation planning consultant, resolution 4C.
Thank you. So this resolution will be, or this contract will be paid for using operating funds. So this request for proposal was publicly let on March 23rd. We sent out 52 proposal packages, 13 of which went to minority and women-owned business enterprises, and 33 additional proposals were requested. On April 13th, we received 4 proposals, and the evaluation committee determined that IBI Group offered the most advantageous proposal. There is a full 30% minority women-owned business enterprise utilization goal in this contract. So we would request award to IBI Group for a full 5-year term.
Why don't you talk a little bit about who was involved in the process?
Sure. So our evaluation committee consisted of numerous members of Centro, so Brian, Chris Tuff, Steve Cagle, Bren Dice, Linda Viata, Joe DeGray, myself, and Josh Gardner. And then we also had some members, from SMTC Mario. We had, Neil from the city and Jen, correct? Okay. So we had, it was a little bit different of an experience having some outside personnel assist us with this evaluation, but looking at the potential projects that this planning consultant will be assisting us with, on-demand transportation, BRT, most notably, we figured that it would be a good opportunity to have
We wanted to have our
SMTC in the city.
outside partners involved in this as well, so.
It was a good time.
Any questions on this? It's,
So when it says your MWB, the goal is 30%?
Yes.
They can come in at 10%.
Well, so the goal is 30%. If a vendor ever does not hit that full 30% goal, then within the contract years, we do have to go back out to the state and request a waiver. So the state does have to approve any type of waiver. So really, they do have to hit that 30% goal, yeah.
What's our current number?
Well, for ours internally, it averages about 35% a quarter.
I just want to get that prize out. You just want to get that out.
Yep, I want that number out there, I want you to know.
I saw the smirk afterwards. Over and above, right?
I want you guys to know that.
You just have to raise your expectations down here.
And I gotta tell you, I mean, Kate and her team, I mean, they do a phenomenal job in making sure that we hit that, and the camera's on, so I'm not gonna say it, but,
We hit it.
we hit
We
it.
exceeded.
We hit it, we exceeded, and not everybody in the state does that. And that's all I'm gonna say.
Point well taken.
Yeah.
all right, so, a motion to award contract to IBI Group for transportation planning consultant. Motion. Julius, a second. Tony, all in favor? Okay, very good, Caitlin, good work.
Thank you.
Chris? Chris is gonna talk about our T-24 scrubber purchase. It's resolution board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
This resolution is for the purchase of a tenant T-24 scrubber. This will be paid for using grant funding. The tenant sales and service company was awarded the federal GSA contract that this tenant floor scrubber falls under. We were given a quote in the amount of $60,211 for this unit. Therefore, it is our recommendation that the board authorize the purchase for the T-24 scrubber through the tenant sales and service company.
Why don't you
With
tell
the
me?
added caveat that I can drive it first.
It's 24
That's
floor
my-
scrubber.
That's what I can tell you. Explain to them
So
what that-
it's a ride-on. If you've ever gone to like
It's a
Wegmans,
Zamboni. Zamboni, they're pretty
if you want to
big.
think of it that way, it's kind of like a Zamboni, but it's a ride-on floor scrubber that the servicers cleaners would be able to clean all the floors with. That's here at 200 Cortland Ave.
A lot of floor bed. Floor.
What are you doing with your old?
We're bringing that one to the hub. We have the old one here that's gonna be.
We're actually
transferred over to the
gonna
hub.
send it to you.
It'll be out back,
I'm moving, I could use it.
It's all yours.
People wanna know where the retirement home is for the floor scrubbers? Great, okay, motion to accept this, for the floor scrubber, Neil second. Joe, all in favor? Aye. Okay, very good, and now, we have an informational item regarding the management report on the internal control. Susanna, this is just, informational, no action to be taken.
Hey everyone. Yes, just a bunch more fun information about our internal control program. Every year we have to submit a report on our internal controls. This is a public authority law requirement. There's no required action from the board. Under section 2931, the board has to oversight our internal control program, but it does not specify that we have to actually approve this report. So this is just an assessment of our internal control structure, our entire system of internal control. You guys just heard from our audit partners that they have to audit our internal controls over financial reporting, internal controls over compliance. Our internal control program assesses internal controls over our entire internal control structure, so operations, all of our different departments, so it's a lot of fun.
Can you say that 3 times?
Internal.
I was trying to let it go
internal-
away.
I'm trying to count how many times.
Right.
Okay. Yes, it's a lot of fun, a lot of internal control. So every year we put together an assessment of our internal control structure. We assess the different areas of the COSO internal control framework, which I've discussed with you guys before. We take a look at our control environment, our risk assessment processes, our different control activities, our specific control activities that are in place across all of our different departments. The way information and communication flows throughout our organization, both internally and externally, and our internal monitoring processes, and our participation with our different audits that we participate with throughout the course of the year. Any questions on the report? We are going to certify that our system is effective and that there were no material weaknesses found. So you just heard that from our audit partners. No material weaknesses noted anywhere else within our internal control framework, so that's very good as well. All components, principles, and focus points are present, functioning, and operating together. So, good to go.
It's also important that there's enough people that have a certain role in each transaction. And that also helps out a lot. So you don't want one person with too much authority over any transaction.
No, definitely not. Separation of duty, big focus in the control environment and organizational
That's how you
structure.
know over there, see it?
Yes, yeah.
And just a reminder, we're talking about internal controls.
Yes. Yes.
We're sending her to you next.
Another thing we should note is that she continues to call this fun
It is
and
fun.
exciting,
Yeah.
and we
is
keep telling her
exciting.
she needs to get out, do something else.
It is fun. It can be.
I tell you, keep up the good work, and I always look forward to talking about internal controls, so thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, very good.
The goal is to bring you a report that's just like this every year.
That's right, no, it really, at the end game, it's very important, it's a very important piece there.
No, and quite honestly, I mean, if we went back, 5 years, 6 years, internal controls was just we were just checking boxes.
Down here, low level.
Turn that off. You know, in the sense that in bringing Suzanne on, I mean, we really have great checks and balances now that we didn't have before.
It's a good value adding
Yes.
project now versus,
So,
trying to
phenomenal job.
meet a compliance requirement. Any questions on the
Very
report? Add some more information.
Good work,
All
good
right,
work, good work.
okay.
Linda, any other business at hand?
No, that completes our report.
Okay, very good, let's take 5 and then we'll go into the meeting. We're gonna start, start the meeting here.
We gotta get you a gavel.
Is DJ in the house? You in the house? Okay, very good. Make sure. Used to be in the front row years ago, now they've squeezed you right out, the new people and put you in the back.
Actually, I think that's where I think that's where he prefers to be.
Okay, we'll start out with the Pledge of Allegiance. Tony's gonna lead us today in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a quorum present today. Our next meeting date is July 22nd. There'll be a pension committee at 9. That'll be an interesting, that should be an interesting. Okay. That'll be, and then audit and finance at 9:30. The motion to approve the minutes for the May 20th meeting. Monty, Joe is second, all in favor? Okay. I'm gonna turn it over to our chief officer, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In addition to my written report, I just want to take a second and acknowledge the fact that Barry and Debbie Shulman received incredible honor from the GCC, the Jewish Community Center, for their helping to make the Sam Pomerantz JCC of Syracuse and the entire Jewish community of Syracuse as great as it is. So I want to acknowledge that and contributions you and Debbie have made to not just the Jewish community, but to the entire Syracuse community. So thank you very much.
Inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Everything I learned in this week.
Don't say that outside.
Don't say that outside of here. Turn that.
I say it everywhere, thank you, God bless.
And thank you for everything you've done for the community. Thanks, Barry. In addition to my written report, I don't have that much other than, it's a brief report because I was on vacation for a few days and we had the trip from hell getting back from Orlando. And it literally was planes, trains, and automobiles to get back here. So we left Orlando, took us 30 hours to get home.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it was,
Just
a plane.
terrific.
No, it was a plane, it was 3 Ubers, a taxi, and a Greyhound.
You made it on one
Yes.
bus.
Yeah, we made it back by bus.
Fitting.
And I gotta tell you, our Greyhound station, or our bus station is leaps and bounds ahead of everything. Yeah, we started off in the Philadelphia bus station, and honestly, I didn't even want to sit. It was so filthy, but anyway, we made it back. On the 25th, central staff, along with representatives of the city and SMTC, as Caitlin mentioned before, met to review transportation consultants, system redesign on June 14th. So we hosted a meeting with our SMTC partners, and we're going to move forward with public engagement, and they're gonna help us do that. To help us, redesign the entire system. And then we've had various meetings on If not.
Okay.
Move on.
Okay, Joe DeGray got pushed up here and, he'll give us his, report. Joe has been very busy trying to, finalize, I think, the final union agreement that was on your plate right now, Bill.
That is correct, yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and good morning. The last of our labor agreements that were open was the contract that represents our Utica division. That contract was ratified by their membership on May 27th. It's a 3-year agreement, in effect from April 1st, 2022 through March 31st, 2025. Like other contracts that we did this past year, this one is a little heavier on the wage side for a couple of reasons. Number one, obviously retention is a big issue. Trying to get people in the door is a big issue. But we were able to gain some real productivity goals back. We actually got some paid time back. We got our sick time in line with what we do here in Syracuse and what we also are now doing in Rome. So it makes our contracts a little more fluid, a little more standardized. So when we start talking about them, we've got, even from a staff perspective, a little easier handle on going, well, what does this group do versus what does this group do? So we're able to gain a lot from that. Some FMLA changes, which are huge. FMLA, it can be an issue with the amount of folks that are eligible for it. So we got that a little bit under control. And we got a nice give back on the life insurance, which is huge. That saves us a lot of money. Not today, but in the long run. You won't see that savings for a while, but that makes a big deal. So at this point, I'd be looking for the board for a motion to ratify this agreement for the 3 years.
George, mentioned again though on the monetary piece, what the package was for the 3 years.
The package over 3 years was just a little under 6% a year. Again, it seems high, but when you look at what's going on in the world, and there's a fine line between paying aggressively and overpaying. So our thought is, we didn't want to go too high because again, we have to support this in 5 years, 10 years. You have to support what you're putting out there. Most unions will not go backwards.
But we're also in parity too.
Yeah, you have parity within our 3 contracts now. All of our employees are pretty much treated the same way, whether it's wage,
Which is
benefits.
something you've been looking for years.
Yeah, this is something when I came here back in '05, that was, one of the things that, I said someday, there'll be parity with that organization along with up here, as we are family. And, I wanna commend Joe and his team for that. And I think right now with the labor crisis, and as you mentioned, Joe, turnover and retention, if we're not retaining, people are offering, it's a very competitive workforce out there.
It is, and for whatever reason, people aren't looking either. I don't know, that's a whole national crisis, but.
So the 6% brings the Utica folks up to par.
Over 3 years, they'll
Close to it.
hit the Syracuse wage rate in about year 3. And then of course Syracuse will start again, but, ideally, that when their contract comes up at the end of 20 and then 24, that we're dealing with more standardized wage increases, somewhere between 2.5 and 3.
And the thinking is, if you're driving a bus in Oswego, you're driving a bus in Syracuse, you're driving a bus in Utica,
That's it.
why are you getting paid a different wage?
Yeah, and to the chairman's point, I mean, in '05, they made just about $10 an hour. They were the lowest paid transit authority in the country. And that was a fact, that's not just making it up, that was real. So at the end of 25, they'll be making almost $27 an hour. So the idea that we're struggling getting people is just astonishing to me. People we used to get 100 applications for 5 openings. Now we get 10 applications for 50 openings. The whole world's gone.
And believe me, my father-in-law was a bus operator, so I heard it pretty good growing up, so. Not air-conditioned buses.
Yeah.
Good. Question, comment? What about from our general manager in Utica? What about him?
I'm very
Casey.
excited about the contract. Good morning, everyone. I'm Casey Martin. And, you know, we have worked very hard to, in the 5 years that I've been there, to build our relationship with the union. And this is a really good example of how well we have done and we have succeeded, so.
Yep.
I'm very excited.
We did this at 5 meetings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Julius?
Yeah.
This may not be part of your report, but I don't know what it's fit into. I was, you know, like I say, I ride the bus occasionally, and I talk to the bus drivers occasionally. And, some of them indicate that you're in the process of expanding the sitting room here. Is that part of your report?
Well, I think what they're referring to is we're remodeling their current lunch break room. That won't probably happen until next spring. It's just a process that we have to go through, and part of it is we have to move them outside for a few weeks. And obviously you can't do that in the fall or the winter, so by the time we're ready to go, with the procurement piece and the final design, it'll probably be for next spring. And that's why if you notice, the big pavilion built on the other side is almost finished. That is for them, so when we do have to kind of push them outside for a few weeks, they've got a real spot there.
This is one of those incidents that, it's not an incident, it's just a small thing. When I'm talking to the driver, to bring this up, that, when they have the lunch break, they don't have a refrigerator or something like that. That's the privilege of chicken, was that taken away? I don't know, it said something like, it's a little thing, but you know, when I'm talking to them, they mention these
Well,
things.
there's, you know, I mean, if we were in full force, it'd be over 200 of them downstairs. I could not buy enough refrigerators to make it work. So what a lot of them do is they bring their lunch with it, you know, a cooler kind of pack and leave it in the car. And, so I won't get into great detail about cleanliness or anything like that, but, you know, that's also an issue. They're fine, I mean, everybody's always got something to.
Right.
As long as you gave me a good wage now, what can I else?
Yeah, we can
This
take
is what
this
we're,
conversation offline.
if this is what we're down to, then I'm happy.
Believe me.
That means we're doing the right thing. We're giving them a good wage, we're giving them a good place to work, clean buses, brand new buses.
Getting back to the point here, and, so noted, have a yeah, I need a motion first to adopt this, Monty, second by Luella. All in favor, aye. Joe, thank you, team, and, really appreciate it, I know from, that group.
So next I wanna do.
Yep, just one quick note, we met with the State Fair on Wednesday. Steve's probably gonna bring up, he's got a press release that's gonna go out early next week, really defining what our final services are going to be. Long Branch, as we've discussed, is finally out, it's official. The county's got a capital project going on there, so we will not have parking available, but we will be at the Orange Lot, Willis Ave, Destiny, downtown, to serve the community for the fair this year, so.
How long is the ride if you get on it, Destiny, for the fair?
Moderate traffic,
Every
8
20
minutes, eight to 10 minutes if it's moderate traffic. It's really a quick turnaround.
And there's no cost for the people being, or they're
It's $1, it's a
Okay.
normal fare. For Destiny and downtown, it's normal fares.
and it's
Orange-
$1 to get there and $1 to get back.
Correct, yeah, and then,
Reduced fare for seniors, reduced fare for disabled.
right, it's our standard fare process that we offer.
Kids under 6 free or under 5?
Yeah, under six.
6. Or free.
Orange Lot and Willis Ave is a free shuttle, but you pay to park your car, cause that's part of the State Fair's parking structure. We just operate that on an hourly basis and get paid by the hour, so it's actually a better.
Yeah, what is the, from the, just curious, from the mall again, Destiny?
Destiny.
What's the cycle of how many times a day is that about, just curious? No,
I mean, we're running 1 to 2 buses every 15 minutes,
wow,
depending on the day.
wow.
And I gotta tell you too, the fair's been a loser for us for years. And Bill Megnar really stepped up this year and provided us additional funding.
Sure.
$500,000,
Security service.
which is huge.
Wow,
Absolutely.
yeah, good, thanks, Joe, good job.
Next I wanna call on, Steve Steve to give his report, and then, he's gonna have Brian come up. That was just her thoughts.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, everybody. I'll start with a little update on our ridership. Our month of May ridership was the overall ridership was down 37%, which is in line with what it's been. However, it's the first month since we had to reduce service in September where each of our core ridership city services were above 50%. So we are regaining some ridership. And looking at June looks like it's going to be a little better, but I will say as June gets toward the back end, our school services drop off and ridership's probably going to start to plateau during summer is what my guesstimate is going to be. We'll probably pick up a little more ridership in August because I anticipate that Stanford services will be greater utilized this year than it was last year. And then we get to September and that will really be tell us a lot in September. We begin our summer schedule on Monday. It's something we do every year. It's one of our, as the school winds down, we redo our services. It's really not much of a change from the customer standpoint. Some minor changes in Syracuse and Auburn, nothing significant. We have made a little adjustment in how our work is assigned for our drivers and changes some of our rules that we hope will help retention of operators. It's a new way of, for lack of a better term, arranging the work, shortening the day for many operators, having less downtime, more time behind the wheel, more efficient service. It's been, and I would say, Joe, it's been very well received so far.
Very well.
Very well received. I think some of the operators are very happy to find out that instead of getting home at 4 o'clock, they're getting home at 2:30 or 3 o'clock. It shortens their day. We hope that will help with attracting new operators and retaining the operators that we do have. So it's a test, but we think it's going to go well. Social media, as you know, we're always active on social media. It's been an active month. One thing that really popped this month was Big Rig Day. I don't know if you all know what Big Rig Day is, but it's where the community brings together all these big fire trucks and buses and all these big vehicles. Kids love it. And on our social media, it got the most activity of anything that we did the entire month. So it's that type of community outreach where we have little kids who can sit behind the wheel, feel like it's what likes to be a bus driver. We think it helps build riders for the future, really ingrains in some individuals that public transportation is a great thing. So it's very good for us to be out in the community in these events, and the feedback you get from is amazing. We had the bus operator go to the Dr. Weeks school a couple of days ago, and a spontaneous singing of the wheels on the bus began with a bunch of 4-year-olds and our drivers doing the windshield wiper. So it was just awesome. That type of stuff, it's just great. So it's been a good month for our community outreach. As we move forward, our operator classes are not big enough to really adding these services. Obviously, for summer, not looking great for September as well because it's a 10-week process of training these operators. So it looks like September is going to be pretty much where we are. The good news is we're carrying more people than we were last year. We are carrying more people even with fewer buses on the road. Our buses are just more full. We're more efficient. It's not ideal. I'd like to be more effective and carrying more riders in totality. If it means we're operating at less efficiency, I'd like to be carrying more individuals. As we move forward, we're continuing this process, and we hope to be able to add services back in the not too distant future. One of the things that we are, what's that?
Could have been a bus driver.
Oh, we need bus operators. As we move forward, we are going to start expanding our services. One of the initiatives that Brian is really pushing hard is for us to be more than just a bus company, and that means looking outside the box and expanding our services. I think as transportation moves forward, if you are a large transportation company and you are only operating fixed route bus services, I think you're going to be left behind. I think the days of expecting everybody to be comfortable with walking down to a bus stop, waiting for a particular bus to show up at a certain time, and then having that fit their needs, it's a challenge. The work day has changed. We need to change with it. And with that type of introduction, I want to bring Bren Dice up. She's our Director of Special Projects and Planning. She's gonna talk about some of the initiatives that we have, that we're moving on to expand the central service platform.
Do we offer coach services in any way?
Pardon?
Do we have coach services?
We cannot.
Cannot,
We
because we're
cannot-
public?
We're public funded, so we cannot do any type of charter work because we could unfairly compete with somebody who has to pay for all this.
Nobody else can do it.
Right. Got it.
Yeah, there are some exemptions, but generally speaking, we don't do charter services.
Got it.
What do you need?
What do you have?
You looking for a bus trip to New York City or something?
Something like that.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just wanted to give you some updates as to some of the new services that we're looking at this year, and the coming years. That's why I got hired to help move some of these new projects along. And I've been working behind the scenes with the Central folks and some others as well. One of the projects I'm working on is the bike and scooter share program. As you know, VO was chosen and you approved that in April. We're excited to see bikes and scooters. I know you guys are seeing it too every day out there. That means that it's working, that people are using it, and that's what we want to see. So our role in that is we're working with municipalities to determine where the equipment should best go so that we can expand that service throughout our service area. As we discussed previously, we'll be taking the city's feedback as well as resident and board feedback, and just excited to see that system grow throughout our service area.
It's hilarious because you just find them everywhere. They just drop them off on a lawn. It's like they're just gone.
That's what you're supposed to do.
And hopefully you're not seeing them in the same spaces, right?
No, they're all
when
over
I
the
pull
place.
into work, there's one here and here and here, and when I leave work, they're in different spots, which means people are using them.
Yeah.
That's awesome. The next program that I'm working on, project that I'm working on, is the BRT. We invited, as Caitlin talked about in her procurement spiel this morning, we invited the City of Syracuse and SMTC to help us evaluate the proposals. And thank you for approving that. Super excited to have a contract moving forward. One of our first tasks with that is to update the Smart One study, and that was done in 2019. And so we want to make sure that we have the current data in that so that we can be moving forward with our BRT. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about microtransit and on-demand service. Internally, we've been working on this on-demand option, really trying to determine how that is going to best move forward, like Steve and Brian have been talking about. You know, a 40-foot bus is not appropriate in every situation. So as we move into the future, how do we get service out there in other ways? So an on-demand service is super exciting. It would be similar to, I don't want to call it a taxi because it's not a taxi. It would be a shared ride service, but you could call or get on your app and get it in 10 or 15 minutes. So you, in areas that we don't have fixed route service. So super exciting. I've studied some other transit agencies as examples. And what I've really learned is the most important thing is the flexibility and the fluidness. It seems like everybody who has put a service out there in 6 months to a year, they've had to change it radically.
Did you talk about the price range for this?
It would be a similar price range to our fixed route service, perhaps $1 or $2 more, but very reasonably priced. And the idea is, again, not a taxi service. You're not getting in a car by yourself. You're still reducing emissions by sharing vehicles with other folks, but we're able to provide that service at a lesser cost.
You know, in Syracuse, are there any first mile and last mile programs?
This program will help with that.
I know, but you know if are there any of those programs in Syracuse? I know one shut
No.
down, volunteer.
No, there's nothing currently.
So with this, you're gonna be getting vans or?
Possibly. We're looking at multiple options.
I'll say, from the first mile, last mile perspective, there was a organization called Providence Services. They provided some of that. They also provided some services
Right,
for.
yeah, they shut
down. They removed some of the areas where we didn't have service. Also, Center State CEO and Enterprise and us are operating a van pool. They just started a van pool. The first van pool actually hit the street last 2 or 3 weeks ago to Van Dyne. Again, it's mostly focused on serving times and locations that we don't currently provide service for, but it also will provide some first mile, last mile options potentially down the road. But that is the bike share. I can see the bike share be a first mile, last mile option. The bikes can't go on the bus. But you can take the bike and go to the end of the line of our bus services, then get on our bus.
Well, the first mile, last mile will help employers, clearly, and getting them from their home to the bus stop, getting to work. You said Center Stage, yourselves?
Center State, Enterprise.
Okay.
And I can't believe, I'm drawing a blank now, the actual, company within Center State that actually is operating it. I'm drawing a blank, but in ourselves, it's something that they're going to pilot for a couple of years, and we will probably eventually take it over in a few years.
When you get the van service, that'll be a different contract on when you have with them. Okay. So you gotta put on a proposal to get the money for this.
The van pool will actually be funded through the federal government, because what will happen is as we increase the miles and the hours of service, we can report them to the federal government. That will go into our 5307 federal allocation. So it'll increase our funding because we're operating more miles and more hours. That there's a lag on operating the hours before you get the money, so that's why we're waiting a few years before we start operating the service ourselves.
And van pool is also supplemented by the folks who are riding the vans and companies that are using them to get to and from work.
So are you gonna use VIA to help you with?
VIA is a company that we've talked to, but the current van pool is Enterprise.
Okay.
They actually operate it. The county and Center State has a grant to fund that program right now.
We did, okay.
So that's how they chose to go with, it was through I think a DRI grant, I think.
Okay.
And they got grant money and they're operating through a grant.
We have a capital project we added to the tip for 2 years from now for 20 vehicles for $1.8 million.
Awesome. So just to wrap up the on-demand conversation, we'll be working on zoning, the zones, and the fleet projections with our on-call transit planning consultant. So again, super excited. Thank you for.
And again, I mean, the focus is to turn us from a bus company to a mobility company.
If I could add one thing, is that what we have seen is that we've seen the transportation networks has become more fractured in a good way.
Yep.
We're seeing, like you mentioned, all these green bikes everywhere.
Yeah.
I can tell you that some of those individuals used to take the bus, and now that they'll use those bikes. And I can tell you that
There's other modes of transportation,
yes.
and we wanna provide them all.
Yes, and we've lost a little bit to Uber and Lyft, not so much now because of their prices and their availability, but if Uber and Lyft had continued the way it had been, I think they would have chipped away at us as well. That's why we're going to the on-demand service. It's kind of like our own Uber and Lyft.
Yeah.
So
You said a Lyft conversation.
yes, we did have a conversation with Lyft. They'd like to help with first mile, last mile, and some other transportation. So there's a lot of solutions out there, potential solutions down the road. Our goal is to navigate all these options, trying to figure out what is best for us and what's best for our community, how we can integrate them within our system, maintain our fixed route system, but then expand to locations where we currently do not provide great services and try to capture those markets as well. So it's a long
VIA
fun.
does.
I noticed that
can't
those
get
little,
everywhere.
what you call little bikes and stuff, they're all over the place, man. They're
Yeah.
in my house,
Yeah.
I got 5 of them.
Everything.
And then you're gonna see them all over the county when we take over, and suddenly they're gonna be able to go to certain parts of the county that they can't get to right now. Those bikes
We're
will
gonna
shut
litter
off.
the entire county with.
So you're gonna compete
Those
against
bikes
the one
will
that
shut off
is
when
now,
they get
right?
to a certain point. They get to a certain location out of the city limit, they turn off.
Yeah.
So now we're gonna be able to have those individuals who wanna get to a different community, they're gonna be able to get there.
Bikes don't work in the winter. That's where the first mile, last mile.
Right. But it's.
Well, they do.
They do.
I mean, they do, but
They do.
And people still ride them, but the numbers do go down. You're not.
Takes a hardy soul.
Maybe not Oswego. Oswego might be a bigger challenge.
I don't know, you might be down to 0.
I think the one that sits, that sit on is better than the one that you stand on.
Yeah.
Because it-
So that's it.
Conversation, very good.
Thanks, Brian, appreciate it. Mike?
Good morning. I'm afraid I don't have that exciting news.
Well, you're IT, so.
Okay.
Nobody understands anything you're saying anyway, so.
So we've been working on desktop refresh and so on and so forth. We had 3 basic phases that we're doing from mobility aspect of it. We're entering phase 3. The equipment has been ordered, so that's going fairly well. Next phase will be doing desktop refresh. We are refreshing some of our server backends. We've had 2 or 3 that have come in, and we've got about 3 more coming in. One's been delayed. It'll be a large server for video equipment. So we're looking forward to that. On our MC side, maintenance connection side, kind of an interesting process. We have a tire tracking process that we're doing. So we're tracking where the tires are, the tread, and so on and so forth. And we have different places where we're getting the odometer readings, devices, fleet watch, odometer readings from the individuals and so on. And the tires themselves actually transition from one bus to another bus, from the front of the bus to the back of the bus because of the tread depth and so on. So tracking all of that for these leasing.
Go around.
We're back at that, yeah. The wheels go round and round to different buses. It's a little bit more complicated than what we've been doing. So this has been a spin-off from the maintenance connection side. How do we actually work on getting this to do a better job? Jim Anderson's been taking a work with that with the maintenance folks themselves, Andrew Scarsons and Mike Rice and so on. So it's coming along. It's going to be a really good program. But it broke MC for a little bit for us.
Extend the life of the tires?
Actually, it's kind of when they're tracking the tire depth, yeah. Because the way we do it at this point, the tire depth is bigger, if I'm not mistaken, Jeff, on the front for the steers, but then they can move in the back, and then when they do the retreads and so on. So we can really retrack all of that. Plus, they're leased at this point, so we
Pay for it by the month.
Lease our tires.
Yeah, pay for it by the month.
Yeah, we lease. So.
Okay.
Yeah. I've never heard of anything, but we lease our tires.
So when we try to do
Talk
that,
about that.
yeah,
Okay.
you got this great program, Maintenance Connection, brand new program. It can track all different kinds of things. We can put the tire information in there, right? It broke some of the things that we're doing in Maintenance Connection. All of a sudden, we couldn't finalize work orders because the tread or the mileage that was on the tire was different. The mileage on the bus was different than what we recorded. So it's kind of interesting to see how this is affecting different things and going through it. Been repaired, it's been set, it's also, we can finalize work orders again, so that's kind of good. We are rolling out emails now to all employees. The maintenance folks have gotten theirs, and the bus drivers are in the process of getting theirs. Thanks to Suzanne, who's helped us with the policies, the procedures, and the documentation that goes along with that. Thanks to Mike Rice and Tiffany Jones, who are actually working on it with the maintenance folks, and then also Natasha Randall, Mitchell, now working on it with the drivers. It's going to be a neat program, and will lead itself into the e-learning process that we're actually doing. So we'll be able to communicate more efficiently as well as get them into more of the learning process. So that's really kind of a new program. That's good. And we're going to continue doing the physical refreshes that we have going on. Any other questions at this point?
The email access, we haven't had that in the past, so that's huge.
Thank you.
Good report. Jeff?
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, everybody. I just want to let you know we got a bus. One of the new buses is downstairs, and it has a high back. So it's got high back seats. They're a more comfortable seat for a longer ride. They're replacing 5 of the MCIs out in Auburn. Take a look at it. It's down there, and it's pretty exciting. I want to talk to you about labor. Jackie is going to mention a little bit about her report labor. We got some issues. We are flush with our servicer cleaners at the moment, which is great news. We got enough cleaners and relayers, and it's working out great. We are down 5 mechanics at the moment, and we're having a hard time finding mechanics. We do have what we like to call a grow your own mechanic internal, which is fantastic. What we do is we bring the servicer cleaners in, we do a prerequisite training class, we post a bid up, say, who's interested in wanting to become a mechanic in the future? They would sign their name, we would give them a test. John Boylan, the director of Fleet Technology, and Josh Kidder, the manager of Fleet Technology, will actually go over the test with them. They'll see where they land, see where they need to focus on. Some of those areas they want to look at are brakes, suspension, air systems, electrical, engine, and AC. So they'll go through that test, they find out where they land, then they have a 5-week course where they come in 3 hours a day, 2 times a week to study and go through everything on that test. And then after the 5 weeks, they take the test again to see where they get. If they pass, they have to get 70 or more, and then they can become qualified, and they can sign for bids for the helper trainings. Currently, we just awarded 2 of our last employees that pre-qualified as a helper trainee, and so we got those 2 filled, which is fantastic.
They come from the cleaner pool?
Yep, absolutely. And that's all I got. They're promoted, and the other ones can get promoted too. So that's a way we actually get mechanics in here.
How are you managing the overtime to get the work done? That's gotta come into play, doesn't it?
Yeah.
For the mechanics, then?
Yeah, we can, if there's.
I mean, are they, okay with the overtime then?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, everybody's okay with it.
They love it.
They prefer more.
Some-
Yes,
yes,
they
some-
do. We have some people that come in and do double shifts all the time, so.
Okay.
Some people do get burned out, but for the most
Right.
part, overtime hasn't been an issue.
Great, good job.
All right. All right, thanks.
Jackie?
Good morning, everyone.
morning.
So Jeff pretty much gave my full report, so I
Well,
have nothing to say.
we're adjourned.
Yeah. No, on one note though, we just had a new operator class start on Monday. We have 6 operators in Syracuse, 2 for Oswego, and we had 2 for Oneida, but I think we're down to 1 now. So we're still,
Is that 9 total or 6?
yes.
Yes to 9.
That's how I answer my tea also.
Are you a numbers guy or what?
Yes, right now, yes. So, as you know, they go through
The
like
answer is
a
yes to whatever.
10-week training course,
Right.
so we'll see how many we have at the end of it. One thing that we did do this week is we started internal discussions with a lot of the other departments in Centro to see what can we do to assist in our recruiting. So we had operations involved, we had service planning and development involved, we have our training department, HR, basically everybody kind of across the board, maintenance, just to see, you know, what other ideas can we come up with, not only to try to get people here, but how do we retain them once we have them here? So this is gonna continue, we're gonna probably meet at least on a monthly basis, just to kind of float ideas around and see, you know, what can we do to improve? And that basically concludes my report, unless anybody has any questions. Thank you.
You guys might notice that Christoph isn't here today. He's pushing 40 and thinks he's 20. And
Young man.
was playing softball and ruptured his Achilles.
Oh.
So he just had surgery Wednesday.
See, I said ooh, not for the pain, because we're self-insured.
What was he doing? Not only are we paying his salary, we're also paying for the medical, so.
Is he going after a fly ball, or what's he thinking?
He stole home.
Did they win?
Yeah, did they win? Good question. Yeah.
They were winning like 22-0 or something.
Come on, everybody else, slow down. He's not here.
The question is, was he just getting in the game?
He was sitting on the bench. Yeah, he was pouring the lemonade.
My vacation request just came in. You realize as you get older, it starts breaking down, you know your limitations.
Anyway, he's He's home recovering and that's why he can't be here today.
He's watching.
He's watching.
I was
And
gonna say,
and honest
he's
to God,
watching right now.
I talked to him this morning, he is watching right now. Everybody waved at Chris. He goes, no, he goes, I can't be there, he goes, but I'll be watching. What the hell's the matter with you?
All right, folks, very good. We're gonna move right into our audit finance report. Everything was discussed in detail. I was happy with John Maloff with his insurance numbers for the ITC pollution liability insurance and the ITC property general liability insurance. There was only a difference in both policies, about $5,000 increase from prior years. I need a motion.
Make sure the Chris Tuff stuff is in the minutes too.
But I'm gonna be tracking that, insurance there. So I need a motion to, we're gonna bundle those together, those insurances, Llewellyn, second, Tony, all in favor, aye. Also, Greg Evans, gave a presentation of our audited financial statements, which, was very impressive. Really impressive with Linda Dion and her team and the staff around here. And, to, have no adjustments or anything for the thousands of transactions that occur here, very impressive. And plus, the moves that I think management and the board made to fund the reserves and other decisions that, I think helped us with our solid fiscal foundation right now and moving forward, I think was, really important too. So, with that being said, I don't have any questions, but I need a motion to accept that. Okay, Robert and Neil, all in favor? Aye. We had the summary financial information on the PL 2800 annual report. Motion was made to accept that, move that to the full board. At this point, we need a motion to accept that. Tony, second, well, all in favor? Also, the report and investment guidelines, really no change, not a lot of ways we can invest. That was accepted and moved to the full board for adoption. Need a motion to accept that. Monty, second. Tony, all in favor? Aye. Caitlin brought us some good reading of procurement and all the activity that went on during the year.
All the excitement.
Very involved, very detailed report, and it shows you basically the flow of where the money is going to vendors, et cetera. Motion was made to bring to the full vote for adoption. We have a motion at this point. Neil, second. Monty, all in favor?
Did you skip the property disposal cut?
Did you get that?
That was good.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'll come back to that. And also, Caitlin discussed the procurement manual updates. There was minimal updates, I want to say minimal to the updates of the procurement.
But it is a good read though.
Yeah. This is not good stuff. It's interesting because, in my professional life, I'm involved with all this stuff, so I do appreciate this work. There's a lot of sweat and pain that go behind this stuff that we hear from different people here. The motion was made to bring it for the full board for adoption. At this point, I have a motion. Julia, second. Luella, all in favor? Aye. And then we'll go back to what I skipped there, the property disposal. Motion was made to bring it to the full board. I have a motion. Robert, second. Monty, second. I'm sorry, Robert first. All in favor? Aye. Moving into resolutions. Our annual subsidy payments where we take the money, comes into the mothership, and we spread it out to all the, I call them profit centers. A motion was made to bring it to the full board for approval. At this point, need a motion. Tony, second. Luella, all in favor? Aye. Caitlin and company, with insiders and external partners, narrowed down our transportation planning consultant. That's motion 4C. And contract to be awarded to the IBI Group for Transportation Planning. Motion was carried to be brought to the full board for adoption. I need a motion at this point. Julia, second. Monty, all in favor? Aye. And, Chris has prepared rides for us outside for this 10 to 24 scrubber.
I want this one. I want this one.
We'll need a motion to, accept the purchase.
First, second.
Neil made the motion. Second, Joe, you're on the back of that machine. Joe, the second, all in favor? Aye. And then, of course, Susanna gave us an update on internal control. And,
What again?
and, come on, Mr. Superintendent. Very good work, Doc, good work. And, this is the stuff that keeps us, keeps us on the right path, and we really mean that. And that was it, it concludes our audit and finance. Turn it back over to our CEO. Any old business? Nope. New business? Nope. Motion for adjournment, what's that?
Thanks, everyone.